The gilded doors had barely closed behind her when his voice cut through the silence. "Leave before the guests arrive." Seren Holloway turned slowly, pulse hammering against her ribs. Caius Ashford, Duke of Thornmere, stood in the arched doorway of the gallery, his face carved from stone. Candlelight caught the sharp planes of his jaw, the cold fury in his pale gray eyes. He looked exactly as she remembered him, exactly as he had looked for 7 long years. Untouchable, unreachable. A fortress wrapped in perfectly tailored evening clothes. She lifted her chin. "Good evening to you as well, Your Grace." He crossed the marble floor in 4 strides, close enough that she could smell sandalwood and something darker beneath it. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. Close enough that she could see the tension coiled in every line of his body, as if he were fighting some internal battle she could not begin to understand. "This is not a game, Miss Holloway. The Hartwell Ball begins in 20 minutes. Half of London society will pour through those doors, and if they see you here, everything your brother has worked to rebuild will be destroyed. My brother invited me. Your brother is a fool." Caius's voice was low, dangerous. "And you are reckless beyond measure. Do you have any idea what they will say when they see you? Do you have any idea what they already whisper behind their fans and their champagne glasses? I know exactly what they whisper." She forced her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I have lived with those whispers for 3 years. I have heard every variation of every lie. I have been called every name a woman can be called. I will not hide from them any more." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or anger, or something else entirely, something she could not name. She could never tell with him. He had perfected the art of revealing nothing, feeling nothing, being nothing, but duty, and ice, and obligation. She had known Caius Ashford for 7 years, ever since Matthias had brought him home from Cambridge that first summer. He had been 24 then, already serious, already distant, already looking at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be known. He had spoken to her exactly 3 times that summer, once to inform her that her bonnet was crooked, once to suggest that her opinion on agricultural reform was charmingly naive, and once, at the end of his visit, to tell her brother that his sister was remarkably spirited for a young woman of her station. She had hated him immediately. She had hated him with a burning, passionate intensity that had not dimmed in 7 years. She had been 19. Foolish, bright with hope, and completely unaware that hope was a luxury she could not afford. "Your pride will ruin you," he said quietly. "It will ruin Matthias. It will ruin everything we have worked to build. My pride is all I have left, thanks in no small part to men like you who decided my worth based on lies they were too lazy to question." His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I never believed those lies." "No. You just acted as if they were true. You stopped speaking to me, stopped looking at me, treated me like I had ceased to exist the moment the scandal broke. You walked past me at the Thornton Garden party as if I were invisible. You declined every invitation where I might be present. You made it abundantly clear that Serene Holloway was no longer worth the effort of acknowledgement. I was protecting you." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Protecting me by pretending I was dead? How noble of you, Your Grace. How terribly, insufferably kind." The silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. In the ballroom below, servants moved like ghosts, lighting candelabras, arranging flowers, preparing for the onslaught of society's finest. Soon, the musicians would arrive. Soon, the guests would flood through the doors in their silks and their jewels and their practiced smiles. Soon, Seren would have to decide whether she was brave enough to face them or broken enough to run. She wasn't broken. Not anymore. 3 years of exile had taught her many things, But the most important lesson was this. She would rather be hated for who she was than forgotten for who she pretended to be. "I am staying," she said. "Whatever you threaten, whatever you warn, I am staying. Matthias believes I deserve a second chance. Lady Hartwell herself approved my invitation. The only person who seems determined to see me fail is you." Caius stepped closer. So close she could see the faint scar along his temple from a riding accident years ago. So close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, despite the cold mask of his expression. So close that if she lifted her hand, she could touch the sharp line of his jaw. "You think I want you to fail? I think you want me to disappear. I think my presence inconveniences you. I think you are courting Lady Honoria Blackwood, and having your best friend's scandalous sister appear at the same ball is terribly awkward for your pristine reputation." Something dangerous moved through his eyes. "You know nothing about what I want." "Then tell me." Her voice cracked despite herself. "Tell me why you have spent 3 years treating me like a ghost. Tell me why you look at me like I am something painful. Tell me why you came to find me tonight, alone, before anyone else arrived." He did not answer. His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles white. In the distance, she heard the first carriage wheels on gravel. The guests were arriving. "Last chance," he said roughly. "Leave through the servants' entrance. No one will know you were here. I will tell Matthias you changed your mind. And what will you tell yourself?" His breath caught. Barely perceptible, but she saw it. Felt it. "You are determined to destroy us both," he whispered. "Perhaps." She met his gaze without flinching. "But at least I will stop hiding. At least I will stop pretending that surviving is the same as living." The carriage wheels grew louder. Voices echoed from the entrance hall below. Laughter, chatter. The bright, cruel world of London society preparing to descend. Caius looked at her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted. Cracked. Then it was gone, buried beneath ice. "Very well." His voice was flat. "Stay. Face them all. But do not expect me to save you when they tear you apart." He turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed on the marble long after he vanished through the doorway. Seren stood alone in the empty gallery, heart pounding, watching the first guests spill into the ballroom below, like wolves entering a garden. She straightened her gown, lifted her chin, and prepared to walk into the fire. She had no idea that the fire was only beginning. The ballroom glittered with 1,000 candles, and Seren Holloway descended the grand staircase, knowing that every eye had turned to watch her fall. They remembered. Of course they remembered. 3 years was nothing to scandal. 3 years was barely a breath in the long memory of London society, and she could see it in their faces as she reached the bottom step. Recognition. Shock. The delicious anticipation of watching someone drown. Lady Whitfield raised her fan to whisper to her companion, her eyes bright with malicious glee. Lord Pembury turned away, as if her very presence offended his sensibilities. 3 young debutantes clustered together near the punch bowl, giggling behind gloved hands, their whispers carrying just far enough for Seren to hear fragments. Disgraced. Shameless. How dare she? And across the room, Caius Ashford watched her with an expression she could not read. Seren forced herself to breathe, forced herself to move. She had survived worse than whispers. She had survived the complete destruction of everything she thought her life would be. She had survived 3 years of isolation, 3 years of pitying looks from servants and cutting remarks from former friends, 3 years of watching the world move on without her. This was just a ballroom. These were just people. They could not hurt her any more than she had already been hurt. Seren. Matthias appeared at her side, his face tight with concern. He was 2 years older, with the same dark hair and gray-blue eyes that marked all the Holloways. But where she had learned to hide her emotions behind stillness, Matthias wore his heart openly. Right now, that heart was worried. "Are you certain about this? It is too late to be uncertain." She took his arm, grateful for the steadiness of his grip. "Besides, you were right. I cannot hide forever. I cannot spend the rest of my life as a ghost in our country estate, attending to needlework and pretending that London does not exist. I did not mean for you to face them alone. I am not alone." She squeezed his arm. "I have you. And Lady Hartwell has been extraordinarily kind. She did not have to invite me. She did not have to risk her reputation on a woman most of society considers ruined beyond redemption. Lady Hartwell believes in redemption." Matthias guided her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. "But not everyone shares her generous spirit. Caius told me he tried to convince you to leave. Caius can go hang himself from the chandelier for all I care." Her brother's lips twitched. "That seems rather extreme. He told me I would ruin everything. He looked at me like I was a disease he wanted to quarantine. Like the very sight of me caused him physical pain." "He looked at you," Matthias said quietly, "like a man who is terrified of something. The only thing Caius Ashford fears is scandal." She accepted a glass of champagne from a passing footman. "And I am the embodiment of scandal, am I not? The woman who destroyed her own reputation by the age of 21. The woman no decent man would consider. The woman who should have had the grace to disappear entirely. That is not what happened. It does not matter what happened." She drank deeply. "It only matters what people believe. It only matters what stories they tell each other over tea and biscuits, what rumors they spread at dinner parties, what lies they whisper behind their fans." She had been 21 when Lady Catherine Huxley came to her in desperation. Catherine had been her closest friend since childhood, the sister she had never had. They had shared everything, every secret, every dream, every hope for the future. And when Catherine told her about Lord Reginald Vance, about the marriage her family was forcing her into, about the cruelty she would face at the hands of a man 3 times her age, with a reputation for violence that made Seren's stomach turn, there had been no question about what she would do. She had helped Catherine escape. She had arranged the carriage, the disguise, the route to Catherine's aunt in Scotland. She had been the one to delay Lord Vance when he came looking for his missing fiancée, spinning lies about headaches and delayed correspondence until Catherine was safely away. And when Lord Vance discovered the deception, he had retaliated with surgical precision. He spread rumors that Seren had been meeting a lover in secret. He produced a witness, a man paid handsomely for his perjury, who swore he had seen her emerging from a gentleman's rooms at an indecent hour. He painted her as a ruined woman, a fallen creature, a cautionary tale for young ladies who thought they could defy their betters. It did not matter that it was all lies. It did not matter that Catherine wrote letters defending her from Scotland. It did not matter that Lord Vance himself was a monster who later died choking on his own cruelty at a dinner party, a death so perfectly ironic that Seren had laughed when she heard the news. The damage was done. Seren Holloway was ruined. "You are staring at nothing." Matthias's voice pulled her back. "I am remembering. Stop remembering." He took her glass, setting it aside. "Start living. That is why we are here. To show them that Seren Holloway still exists, still breathes, still deserves a place in this world. And if they disagree, then we make them change their minds. One person at a time, one conversation at a time, one evening at a time. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We fight." A presence materialized beside them. Seren did not need to look to know who it was. She could feel him like a shift in the atmosphere, like a storm approaching. "Miss Holloway." Caius's voice was formal, cold. "Matthias, if I might borrow your sister for a moment." Matthias looked between them, clearly reluctant. "Caius, Whatever you said to her earlier, I think you should know that I support her decision to be here. Your support is noted. It is not merely noted. Matthias's voice hardened. It is final. She is my sister. She belongs here as much as anyone in this room. If you have a problem with her presence, that is your burden to carry, not hers. Something shifted in Caius's expression, a crack in the ice. I never said she did not belong. Then what did you say? I asked her to leave for her own protection. He finally looked at Seren, and his eyes were unreadable. I was wrong. She stared at him. Wrong? I should not have asked you to hide. His face tensed with something like regret. I should have offered to stand beside you instead. Before she could respond, a new voice cut through the tension like a blade. Well. Lord Aldrich Pemberton appeared, his smile wide and false. Miss Holloway, what an unexpected pleasure. I had heard you retired permanently to the country. Something about a scandal, was it not? Seren's blood ran cold, and suddenly, the evening became infinitely more dangerous. Lord Aldrich Pemberton was precisely the sort of man mothers warned their daughters about, and Seren had known it the moment she first met him 4 years ago at a garden party in Hampshire. He was handsome in a calculated way, the kind of handsome that came from hours spent before a mirror, perfecting every detail. Golden hair artfully arranged to appear carelessly tousled, blue eyes that sparkled with perpetual amusement at some private joke only he understood. He dressed impeccably in the latest fashions, spoke eloquently on every subject, and moved through society like a shark gliding through warm waters, all smooth grace and hidden teeth. Everyone adored him. Everyone trusted him. His smile could charm diamonds from dowagers and secrets from debutantes, and he wielded that charm like a weapon. Everyone except the women who had learned too late what lurked beneath the charm. Lord Pemberton. Seren kept her voice steady despite the chill spreading through her veins. How kind of you to remember me. Remember you? He laughed, a sound like glass breaking. My dear Miss Holloway, how could anyone forget? Your departure from society was quite the spectacle. I believe there was weeping, perhaps some fainting. The gossip columns talked of nothing else for months. There was neither, actually. She forced a smile, but I appreciate your vivid imagination. His eyes glittered. Imagination has very little to do with it. I was there, after all, at the Waverley Ball when Lord Vance made his accusations. Quite the performance you gave. So much passion, so much conviction. One might almost have believed you were innocent. She was innocent. Matthias stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Lord Vance was a liar and a coward, who used his influence to destroy a woman who dared to help his fiancée escape an abusive match. Everyone with any sense knows the truth. Allegedly abusive. Pemberton raised one eyebrow. Lady Catherine's account was never verified, and Lord Vance, God rest his soul, is no longer here to defend himself. How convenient for those who would speak ill of the dead. Lord Vance choked on a fishbone at his own dinner party, Seren said flatly. I hardly think his absence constitutes innocence. If anything, it suggests that even the universe found him intolerable. How morbid. Pemberton placed a hand over his heart in mock distress. And here I thought you had returned to society with a gentler disposition. Clearly the country has not softened your edges. If anything, exile seems to have sharpened them. Caius moved. It was subtle, just a slight shift in his stance. But suddenly he was positioned between Seren and Pemberton, like a shield she had not asked for. I believe Miss Holloway's edges are none of your concern, Caius said quietly, unless you are looking to cut yourself on them. Something flickered in Pemberton's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation. My dear Thornmere, I meant no offense. I was merely expressing pleasure at seeing an old acquaintance. Miss Holloway and I were quite friendly once, were we not? We were never friendly, Seren said. You danced with me once at the Marchmont ball. You spent the entire dance talking about your horses. I do not recall a single question about my interests, my opinions, or my existence as a human being. Pemberton's smile grew rigid. I have excellent horses. I am sure you do. The air between them grew brittle as thin ice. Serene could feel eyes turning toward their little gathering, could feel the weight of attention pressing down on her like a physical thing. This was what she had feared. Not the whispers, not the sideways glances, but this. The direct confrontation, the careful cruelty disguised as conversation. The way men like Pemberton could wound with a word and walk away smiling, leaving their victims bleeding on the ballroom floor. Well, Pemberton adjusted his cuffs. I shall leave you to your evening. Miss Holloway, I do hope your return to society is everything you dreamed it would be. He bowed with exaggerated courtesy and disappeared into the crowd. The moment he was gone, Seren released a breath she had not realized she was holding. He is going to be a problem. Matthias's voice was grim. He has friends everywhere, influence, connections that reach into every corner of London society. If he decides to make your presence here difficult, he could destroy everything before the night is over. I know. We should leave. Matthias reached for her arm. Cut our losses. Try again another time when Pemberton is not here to interfere. No. Both men stared at her. No, she repeated, voice firmer. If I leave now, if I let him drive me out, I prove everything they believe about me. I prove that I am ashamed, that I have something to hide, that the rumors were true. I will not give him that satisfaction. The rumors were not true, Caius said quietly. Then let me prove it. She met his eyes. You asked me to leave before the guests arrived. I refused. Now you are asking me to stay hidden in corners, while Pemberton controls the narrative. I refuse that too. This is not about hiding, Matthias argued. This is about strategy. Living to fight another day. I have been living to fight another day for 3 years. She turned to her brother, her chest constricting with emotion. I am tired of waiting for another day. I am tired of being careful and quiet and invisible. I came here to reclaim my place in this world, and I will not let one poisonous man take that from me. Silence. Then Caius did something unexpected. He extended his hand. Dance with me, he said. She stared at him. What? If Pemberton wants to spread poison, let us give him something else to talk about. The Duke of Thornmere dancing with Seren Holloway. That will occupy the gossips far more than old scandals. You cannot be serious. Her heart was racing. If you dance with me, people will assume you are courting me. They will assume all manner of things that will damage your reputation irreparably. Let them assume. Lady Honoria Blackwood is here, your intended. She is not my intended. Something burned in his eyes. She never was. Matthias looked between them, clearly bewildered. Caius, what are you doing? What I should have done 3 years ago. Caius's hand remained extended, steady and sure. I am choosing a side. Dance with me, Miss Holloway. Let me show them that you have allies. Seren felt her breath catch in her chest. This was madness. This was social suicide. This was everything she had told herself she did not want. But his hand was waiting, and his eyes were fierce, and somewhere across the ballroom, Lord Aldrich Pemberton was already whispering into eager ears. She placed her hand in his. One dance, she said quietly. That is all. One dance, he agreed. But the way his fingers closed around hers felt like a promise, or perhaps a warning. And as he led her toward the center of the ballroom, Seren realized that whatever happened next, there would be no turning back. The waltz began, and Seren Holloway discovered that dancing with Caius Ashford was nothing like she remembered. 7 years ago, at her first season, He had danced with her exactly once. A duty dance, performed at Matthias's insistence and with all the enthusiasm of a man fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. He had held her at proper distance, spoken perhaps 3 words the entire time, and delivered her back to her brother with obvious relief the moment the music ended. She had spent the entire dance feeling like an obligation he could not wait to discharge, a task to be completed and forgotten. This was different. This was something else entirely. His hand at her waist was firm, almost possessive. His eyes never left her face, and when he pulled her into the first turn, she felt the strength in his arms like a current running through her body. He danced like he did everything else, with precision, with control, with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only other person in the room. "You are trembling," he said quietly. "I am not. You are." His thumb brushed against her spine through the silk of her gown. "Are you afraid of dancing?" "Hardly. Of what comes after." She did not answer, could not answer, because yes, she was afraid. She was terrified of what the morning would bring, what stories would spread, what new cruelties would be invented to explain why the Duke of Thornmere had chosen to dance with the most notorious woman in London. "People are staring," she said instead. "Let them stare. Easy for you to say. Your reputation will survive this. Mine may not. Your reputation," he said slowly, "was destroyed by lies. It can be rebuilt by truth." "What truth? That you pity me? That Matthias begged you to help his ruined sister?" Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or frustration. "Is that what you think this is? Pity? I do not know what this is." She forced herself to meet his gaze. 3 hours ago you told me to leave. Now you are dancing with me in front of everyone you know. What am I supposed to think? Think that I was wrong." His voice was rough. "Think that I have been wrong for 3 years. Think that watching you walk down those stairs tonight was the bravest thing I have ever seen, and I am ashamed that I tried to stop you." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled slightly, and his arm tightened, steadying her. "Careful," he murmured. "We have an audience. You cannot say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I do not know how to respond. Because you have spent 7 years treating me like an inconvenience, and now suddenly, you are saying that I am brave. You have always been brave." His face hardened with something like self-reproach. I was simply too blind to acknowledge it. The music swelled around them. Other couples moved past in a blur of silk and candlelight. Seren was dimly aware of whispers, of pointed glances, of the hungry attention of a society that fed on scandal, like wolves fed on wounded prey. But all she could see was Caius. All she could feel was his hand at her waist, his fingers intertwined with hers, the impossible heat of his body so close to her own. "Why now?" she asked. "Why tonight?" "Because I finally understood something." "What?" He did not answer immediately. The waltz carried them through another turn, past a cluster of matrons with raised fans, past a group of young men who watched with undisguised curiosity. Then, quietly, he said, "I understood that protecting you by staying away was never protection at all. It was cowardice. And you deserve better than my cowardice." Before she could respond, the music ended. They stood frozen for a moment, still holding each other, still caught in whatever strange spell the dance had woven around them. Then Caius stepped back, releasing her with obvious reluctance. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Holloway. Thank you for asking, Your Grace." He bowed. She curtsied. The forms were perfect, proper, exactly what society expected. But his eyes told a different story. And across the ballroom, Lord Aldrich Pemberton watched them with a smile that promised nothing good. The trouble arrived in the form of Lady Honoria Blackwood. She was beautiful in the way that expensive things were beautiful. Flawless porcelain skin, hair the color of burnished copper, arranged in elaborate curls. A gown of ice blue silk that probably cost more than most families earned in a year. She was also, according to every gossip column in London, the woman Caius Ashford was expected to marry. Your Grace. Lady Honoria appeared at Caius's side moments after the dance ended, her smile bright and brittle. What a delightful surprise. I did not realize you would be dancing this evening. Lady Honoria. Caius's voice was carefully neutral. I trust you are enjoying the ball. Immensely. Her gaze slid to Seren, assessing. Though I confess, I am surprised by your choice of partner. Miss Holloway, is it not? I thought you had retired from society. Permanently. I have returned, Seren said simply. How brave of you. The words dripped with false sweetness. After everything that happened, I would have thought London held rather painful memories. Painful memories exist everywhere, Lady Honoria. The trick is learning to make new ones. Lady Honoria's smile grew rigid. How philosophical. She turned back to Caius, dismissing Seren entirely. Your Grace, I believe you promised me a dance this evening. Shall we? It was a lie. Seren could see it in the flicker of Caius's expression. He had promised nothing. But Lady Honoria was banking on his good manners, on his reluctance to cause a scene, on the social pressure that made it nearly impossible for a gentleman to refuse a lady's request in public. Caius hesitated. Just a moment. But that moment stretched into something unbearable. Actually, Seren heard herself say, His Grace promised the next dance to me as well. We were just discussing it. Both Caius and Lady Honoria turned to stare at her. Is that so? Lady Honoria's voice could have frozen the champagne. How very presumptuous. Is it presumptuous to keep a promise? Seren smiled with all her teeth. I would have thought it was merely honorable. Silence. Then Caius did something extraordinary. He laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised, and it transformed his face completely. For just a moment, he looked like the young man she remembered from 7 years ago, before duty had hardened him, before propriety had frozen him solid. Miss Holloway is correct, he said. I did promise her another dance. My apologies, Lady Honoria. Perhaps later in the evening. Lady Honoria's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, fury, calculation. Then a smile so sharp it could have cut glass. Of course, Your Grace, I shall hold you to that. She turned and swept away, her ice blue gown trailing behind her like a threat. The moment she was gone, Seren exhaled. I cannot believe I just did that. Neither can I. Caius was still smiling. That was either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. Definitely both. But he offered his hand again. Shall we? You did promise me another dance. I lied. I know. His eyes were warm. Dance with me anyway. She should have refused. She should have retreated to Matthias's side and spent the rest of the evening hiding in corners. She should have done 100 sensible things. Instead, she took his hand. The second dance was a cotillion, which meant less intimate contact, but more opportunity for conversation. The figures of the dance moved them apart and together, in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. As they wove through the patterns, Seren found herself stealing glances at Caius, trying to reconcile the cold, distant man she had known for 7 years with this new version, who laughed and smiled and looked at her like she was something precious, something worth protecting, something worth choosing. You are staring at me, he said during a promenade, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You are confusing me. Good. Good? I have spent 3 years trying to maintain a distance that was never natural. His voice was low, meant only for her. It is a relief to stop pretending. Pretending what? That I do not care what happens to you. The words stole her breath. She stumbled through the next figure, and he steadied her with a touch that lingered too long to be proper. You cannot say things like that, she whispered. So you keep telling me. I mean it. People will notice. People will talk. People are already talking. He guided her through a turn. They have been talking since the moment you walked through those doors. The only question is what story they will tell. And what story do you want them to tell? He looked at her for a long moment. The truth. Which is, I have not decided yet. The dance ended. This time, when they separated, Seren felt the loss like a physical ache. I need air, she said abruptly. Excuse me. She fled before he could respond, weaving through the crowd toward the terrace doors. She needed space, needed to think, needed to understand what was happening before she made a mistake she could not undo. The terrace was cool and dark, lit only by scattered lanterns. She leaned against the stone balustrade, breathing deeply, trying to slow her racing heart. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned, expecting Caius. It was Pemberton. Miss Holloway. He smiled, and the expression made her skin crawl. I thought I might find you here. Hiding from your admirers? I am not hiding. No, he moved closer. It certainly looked like hiding. One moment you were dancing with Thornmere, the next you vanished like a ghost. I needed air. The ballroom is quite warm, he agreed pleasantly. All those candles, all those bodies, all that pretense. Something in his tone made her stiffen. What do you want, Lord Pemberton? Direct as always. He leaned against the balustrade beside her, too close. I want to offer you some friendly advice. I doubt we share the same definition of friendly. Perhaps not. His smile widened. But I think you will want to hear this anyway. I sincerely doubt it. It concerns Thornmere. He paused, watching her face. And the real reason he is suddenly paying you so much attention. Serene's stomach dropped. I do not know what you mean. Do you not? Pemberton's voice was silky. You are not a fool, Miss Holloway, whatever else you may be. Surely you have wondered why the most eligible duke in England would suddenly attach himself to a woman with no reputation, no fortune, and no prospects. Perhaps he simply enjoys my company. Perhaps, Pemberton laughed softly, or perhaps he needs something from your brother, something that requires your cooperation. My brother has nothing Thornmere needs. Does he not? Pemberton tilted his head. I have heard rumors about certain investments, shipping ventures, trade routes that require political connections to secure. Your brother has been cultivating those connections quite assiduously. That has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. He stepped closer, and she could smell wine on his breath. Thornmere needs your brother's support for a venture that could make him very wealthy. What better way to secure that support than to court the sister? You are lying. Am I? Then why did Thornmere suddenly decide to dance with you tonight? Why is he looking at you like you are the only woman in the room? Because he genuinely cares for you? Yes. The word came out before she could stop it. Yes, he does. Pemberton stared at her. Then he laughed, long and cruel. Oh, my dear Miss Holloway. His voice dripped with false sympathy. You really believe that, do you not? You really think the Duke of Thornmere would risk his reputation, his standing, his future marriage to Lady Honoria Blackwood for you? He said Lady Honoria was never his intended, and you believed him. Pemberton shook his head slowly. How terribly naive. The contracts were drawn up months ago. I have seen them myself. Thornmere is set to marry Lady Honoria by the end of the season. His father arranged it before he died. The words hit her like ice water. You are lying, she said again, but her voice wavered. Ask him yourself. Pemberton straightened, adjusting his cuffs. Ask him about the contracts. Ask him about the shipping venture. Ask him why he suddenly appeared at your side tonight after 3 years of silence. I think you will find his answers illuminating. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Miss Holloway. I would be very careful about trusting your brother's friends. In my experience, men like Thornmere are never what they seem. He vanished into the darkness. Seren stood alone on the terrace, trembling, as everything she thought she understood crumbled around her. She did not know how long she stood there, minutes, perhaps, or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Contracts, shipping ventures, political connections. Was that all she was? A pawn in some arrangement between her brother and Caius? A convenient piece to be moved across a board she did not even know existed? It could not be true. Matthias would never use her like that. He loved her. He had spent 3 years defending her, protecting her, fighting for her place, in a world that wanted to forget she existed. But Caius, she thought of the way he had looked at her tonight, the warmth in his eyes when he laughed, the way his hand felt at her waist, steady and sure. Had all of it been calculated? Had every word, every gesture, every moment of apparent honesty been nothing more than manipulation? Miss Holloway, she spun around. Caius stood in the terrace doorway, his expression concerned. You have been out here for nearly 20 minutes. Matthias is worried. Matthias is worried? Her voice came out sharp. Or you are. I am as well. He stepped onto the terrace. Something has upset you. Nothing has upset me. You are trembling. It is cold. It is not that cold. He moved closer. What happened? She wanted to ask him, wanted to demand the truth about the contracts, the shipping venture, everything Pemberton had said. But the words stuck in her throat, tangled with fear and doubt, and something that felt terribly like hope. Because if she asked and he lied, she would know, and knowing would destroy whatever fragile thing had begun to grow between them tonight. I encountered Lord Pemberton, she said carefully. Caius went very still. What did he say to you? Nothing of consequence. Seren, his voice was rough. Tell me what he said. She stared at him. You called me by my first name. Did I? You did. She laughed, brittle. We are not on first-name terms, Your Grace. We barely know each other. We have known each other for 7 years. No. You have known my brother for 7 years. You have tolerated me, endured me, occasionally acknowledged my existence when politeness demanded it. But you do not know me. Something flickered across his features. Pain. You are right. His voice was quiet. I do not know you. I made certain of that. Why? Because knowing you was dangerous. She stared at him. Dangerous? Caius ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful arrangement. Do you remember the Marchmont Ball? 5 years ago? Vaguely. She had attended dozens of balls over the years. They all blurred together. You wore a yellow gown. You laughed at something Lady Catherine said, and the sound carried across the entire room. I was standing with your brother, discussing something tedious about estate management, and I looked up and saw you. He paused, his face tight with emotion. I saw you, and I thought, if I let myself care about her, I will never be able to stop. The words hung in the air between them. Seren found she could not breathe, could not move, could not do anything but stare at him as the world rearranged itself around this single impossible confession. So I chose not to care, he continued, voice harsh. I chose distance. Coldness. I made myself look through you, because looking at you was too difficult to bear. And when the scandal broke, when Lord Vance destroyed your reputation with his lies, I told myself it was better this way. Better that you hate me than risk everything by standing at your side. You abandoned me. Yes, the word was wrenched from him. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I told myself I was protecting you by staying away, but the truth is, I was protecting myself. From wanting something I thought I couldn't have. From choosing something that terrified me. And now, he laughed, broken. Now I am watching you face down an entire ballroom alone, and I am realizing that my protection was never worth anything, that my distance only made things worse, that 3 years of telling myself I did not love you was the greatest lie I have ever told. The word echoed between them. Love. He had said love. Serene opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. What about Lady Honoria? Her voice shook. What about the contracts? Caius's expression changed, darkened. What do you know about the contracts? Pemberton told me. That you are bound to marry her by the end of the season. That your father arranged everything before he died. The silence that followed was long and terrible. Then, quietly, Caius said, Pemberton told you the truth. Most of it. The words hit her like a physical blow. So it is real. She stepped back. You are engaged to her. My father signed the contracts without my consent. I was not even in the country. I returned to discover that my future had been decided for me. But you did not refuse. I could not refuse without destroying my family's relationship with the Blackwoods entirely. There are debts, obligations. My father left the estate in disarray, and breaking the engagement would have financial consequences I am still trying to untangle. So you are going to marry her. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he said, Ask me if I want to. Does it matter what you want? It matters more than anything. She should have walked away, should have ended this conversation before it went any further, should have protected herself from the devastation she could feel approaching. Instead, she asked, Do you want to marry Lady Honoria Blackwood? No. The word was immediate, absolute. I want to break the contracts. I want to tell the Blackwoods that I will not be bound by promises made without my knowledge. I want to choose my own future. And what future do you want? His eyes never left hers. I want a future where I wake up beside someone who challenges me, someone who makes me laugh, someone who walked into a ballroom knowing she would be torn apart and did it anyway because she refused to hide anymore. His voice dropped. I want you, Seren. I have wanted you for 5 years, and I am done pretending otherwise. She was crying. She had not realized it until she felt the tears sliding down her cheeks, hot and silent. You cannot have me, she whispered. Not while those contracts exist. Not while you are bound to someone else. Then I will break them. You said there would be consequences. There will be. He stepped closer. I do not care. Your family's reputation. I do not care. Your fortune. Your standing. Everything you have worked to protect, none of it matters. His hands came up to cup her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. None of it means anything if I lose you. You never had me. Then let me earn you. His forehead pressed against hers. Let me prove that I am not the coward who abandoned you 3 years ago. Let me fight for you the way I should have fought from the beginning. And if you fail, then I will have failed trying to deserve you. Which is more than I can say for the last 7 years. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the fierce certainty in his voice, the desperate sincerity in his eyes. But Pemberton's words echoed in her mind. Men like Thornmere are never what they seem. I need time, she said, to think, to understand what you are offering. Take whatever time you need. He released her face, stepping back. I have waited 5 years. I can wait longer. And if I decide you are lying, if I decide this is all some manipulation for my brother's connections, then I will spend the rest of my life proving you wrong. From inside the ballroom, music swelled, laughter echoed. The world continued on, oblivious to the earthquake that had just reshaped Seren's entire understanding of herself. We should go back inside, she said quietly, before people start to talk. Let them talk. I am serious, Caius. His name. She had used his name. Something softened in his expression. Say that again. We should go back inside? My name. Say my name again. Caius. Her voice wavered. We cannot do this here. Not now. Not with Pemberton watching, and Lady Honoria waiting, and my entire future hanging by a thread. Then we will continue this conversation later, tonight. After the ball. Where? The garden. Midnight. There is a gazebo near the west fountain, and if someone sees us, they will not. He offered his arm. Come. Let us give the gossip something new to discuss. She took his arm, felt the strength of him, the heat of him, and the impossible reality of what had just happened. They walked back into the ballroom together, and somewhere in the shadows, Lord Aldrich Pemberton watched them with calculating eyes. Whatever game was being played, it was far from over. The hours until midnight crawled like wounded creatures, each minute stretching into an eternity of anticipation and dread. Seren danced with 3 different gentlemen, smiled until her face ached, and pretended that everything was normal, while her mind raced in circles. Lord Ashton talked endlessly about his horses. Sir William stepped on her feet twice, and apologized profusely each time. Mr. Pembroke asked whether she had heard the latest gossip about the Duchess of Wiltshire, and seemed disappointed when she confessed she had not. Through it all, she moved mechanically, her body performing the steps, while her thoughts remained fixed on the garden, on midnight, on Caius. Caius had retreated to the card room with Matthias and a group of other men, but she felt his presence like a compass pointing north. Every time she turned, her eyes found him through the doorways and across the crowded spaces. Every time she laughed at some forgettable joke, she wondered if he was watching. Every time a waltz began, and she was led to the floor by another forgettable partner, she imagined his hands at her waist instead, steady and warm and possessive. He was always watching. She caught him looking at least a dozen times. Each time their eyes met, something passed between them. A question, a promise, a reminder of what waited in the garden. And each time, she looked away first, afraid that if she held his gaze too long, everyone in the ballroom would see what burned between them. Lady Honoria had positioned herself near the refreshment table, holding court with a cluster of admirers. She did not approach Seren again, but her gaze was a constant wait, cold and calculating. Whatever alliance had been promised between the Ashfords and the Blackwoods, Lady Honoria clearly intended to claim her prize, and she did not appreciate competition. And Pemberton. Pemberton drifted through the ballroom like smoke, appearing at her elbow when she least expected it, murmuring comments that seemed innocent but landed like poison. Thornmere looks distracted tonight. I wonder what could be occupying his thoughts. Lady Honoria seems rather upset. Did something happen between her and the Duke? Your brother is deep in conversation with Lord Ashworth. Shipping business, I imagine. Very lucrative, those trade routes. Each comment was a needle, designed to make her doubt, designed to make her question everything Caius had said on the terrace. By 11 o'clock, she was exhausted. Her feet ached. Her smile had become a mask she could barely maintain. And the clock on the mantelpiece seemed to move backward rather than forward. You look troubled. She turned to find Matthias at her side, his expression concerned. I am fine, she said automatically. You are lying. He guided her toward a quieter corner. You have been lying all evening. What happened with Thornmere? Nothing. Seren. She looked at her brother, at the worry etched into his features, and felt something crack inside her. Pemberton told me about the contracts, she said quietly, about Caius and Lady Honoria, about the shipping venture. Matthias's expression shifted, hardened. What exactly did he tell you? That Caius is bound to marry Lady Honoria by the end of the season, that the contracts were signed before his father died, that your investment in the shipping routes requires political connections that Caius can provide. She paused, her chest constricting painfully. That I am a pawn in some arrangement between you. Silence. Then Matthias said quietly, Pemberton is a snake who would sell his own mother for advantage. But he is not entirely wrong. Seren felt the ground shift beneath her feet. You used me. No. Matthias grabbed her arm, urgent. Listen to me. Yes, I have been working with Caius on a shipping venture. Yes, his connections would be valuable. But I never, ever used you as leverage. I would never do that. You are my sister. You are not a bargaining chip. Then why is Caius suddenly interested in me? Because he has always been interested in you. Matthias's voice was fierce. Do you think I am blind? I have watched him watch you for years. I have seen the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is paying attention. I have listened to him ask about you, casually, carefully, as if the answers did not matter when we both knew they did. But the contracts are real, Matthias admitted. His father signed them without Caius's knowledge. Caius has been trying to find a way out of them for months. That is why he came to me. Not for business connections, but for legal advice. Our cousin Bertram is a solicitor. Caius wanted to know if there was any way to break an engagement contract that was signed under false pretenses. False pretenses? The old Duke told the Blackwoods that Caius had agreed to the match. He forged letters of consent. When Caius returned from abroad and discovered what had happened, he was furious. But by then, the contracts were signed, the announcements were made, and the entire world believed he had chosen Lady Honoria. Seren stared at her brother, her pulse quickening. Why did he not simply refuse? Because the old Duke died 3 days later, and breaking the engagement immediately after his father's death would have made Caius look heartless. The Blackwoods would have destroyed him in the press. So he has been waiting, building his case, gathering evidence of the forgery. And now? Now he has enough evidence to break the contracts legally. Matthias's eyes were intent. He told me tonight, before the ball, he said he was done waiting, that something had changed. Something had changed. Her. She had changed everything by walking down those stairs. The clock struck 11:45. I need to go, she said. Matthias's eyes narrowed. Where? Somewhere. She pulled away. I will explain later. Seren, wait. But she was already moving, weaving through the crowd toward the terrace doors. She needed air, needed space, needed to understand what was happening before she met Caius in the garden. Because if what Matthias said was true, if Caius had been fighting to free himself for months, if his feelings were real and not manufactured for advantage, then everything she thought she understood was wrong, and everything she thought she could not have might actually be possible. She slipped through the terrace doors and into the cool night air. The garden was silver with moonlight. Seren moved through the shadows, following the stone path toward the west fountain. She could hear water splashing somewhere ahead, soft and constant. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. What was she doing? What did she expect to happen? Caius had asked her to meet him at midnight, had declared feelings she still could not quite believe, had promised to break contracts and defy expectations and choose her. But promises were easy in moonlight. Reality was harder. The gazebo appeared through the trees, white marble gleaming against the darkness. A figure stood inside, tall and still, waiting. She approached slowly, giving herself time to think, time to prepare, time to decide what she wanted to say. But when Caius turned and saw her, all her careful preparations dissolved. You came, he said quietly. Did you think I would not? I thought you might decide I was not worth the risk. She climbed the gazebo steps, stopping just out of reach. I thought the same thing about you. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy with expectation. The fountain splashed nearby, its gentle music a counterpoint to the thundering of her heart. Somewhere in the distance, music drifted from the ballroom, faint strains of a waltz that seemed to belong to another world entirely. Here in the gazebo, with moonlight silvering the marble columns, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine heavy in the air. Everything felt suspended. Possible. Real in a way that nothing had felt real for 3 long years. Matthias told me about the contracts, she said finally, breaking the silence that had grown too heavy to bear. About the forgery. About what you have been doing for the past 6 months. Caius's expression flickered. I asked him to keep that private. He thought I'd deserve to know. You did deserve to know. He turned away, gripping the gazebo railing. I should have told you myself. I should have explained everything instead of making dramatic declarations that must have seemed completely mad. They did seem mad, she admitted. A duke choosing a ruined woman over a perfectly advantageous match? It defies all logic. Logic has nothing to do with how I feel about you. How do you feel about me? He was silent for a long moment. The moonlight caught the sharp lines of his face, illuminating the vulnerability beneath the mask he usually wore. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion she had never heard from him before. Then he turned back to face her, and his eyes were raw. I feel like I have been drowning for 5 years, he said quietly. Every ball, every dinner party, every social obligation. I have been going through the motions, performing the role of the duke everyone expects me to be, while inside I was suffocating. And every time I see you, I remember what it was like to breathe. Every time I hear your laugh across a crowded room, every time I catch a glimpse of you in a garden or a gallery, something inside me comes alive again. That is how I feel about you. That is what you do to me. And I am terrified of it. Serene felt her breath hitch in her chest, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. Caius, I know I have no right to say these things. I know I have done nothing to earn your trust. I abandoned you when the scandal broke. I let you suffer alone because I was too afraid of what wanting you might cost me. I was a coward. You were protecting yourself. I was protecting nothing. His voice was harsh. I lost 3 years with you because I was too weak to fight for what I wanted. And now I am standing here, asking you to give me a chance I do not deserve, knowing you have every reason to refuse. She moved closer, close enough to see the tension in his face, the fear in his eyes. What if I do not refuse? He went very still. What if I say yes? She reached up, her fingers brushing his cheek. What if I tell you that I have spent 3 years hating you for abandoning me, but beneath the hatred was something else, something that never quite died, no matter how hard I tried to kill it? Serene, I am terrified, she whispered. Terrified that this is a dream. Terrified that you will wake up tomorrow and realize you have made a terrible mistake. Terrified that everything Pemberton said was true, and I am just a fool who wants too much. You are not a fool. His hand came up to cover hers. And Pemberton is a liar who wants to destroy anything good because he cannot have it himself. Why does he hate you so much? Caius hesitated. Then quietly he said, because I refused to help him destroy someone else 3 years ago. Someone he wanted to ruin for personal reasons. Who? Catherine Huxley. Serene's blood ran cold. Catherine? Pemberton wanted to marry her, before she was promised to Lord Vance. When Catherine's family refused him, he blamed me. Said I had poisoned them against him. But you barely knew Catherine. I knew her enough to warn her father about Pemberton's gambling debts, about the women he had ruined, about the violence he was capable of when he did not get what he wanted. The words hit her like stones. Violence. Caius nodded, his face grim. There were rumors. Servants who had been dismissed for speaking out. A young woman who disappeared from society entirely after refusing his advances. Nothing that could be proven, but enough to make me warn Lord Huxley. So when Lord Vance destroyed my reputation, Pemberton saw an opportunity. He helped Vance spread the rumors, made certain they reached every corner of London society. He wanted to punish me by hurting everyone I cared about, including me. Especially you. Caius's eyes were fierce, because he knew. Somehow, he knew that I cared about you, and destroying you was a way to destroy me. Serene's mind raced. 3 years of suffering, 3 years of exile and shame and loneliness, and behind it all, Pemberton, pulling strings she had never seen. Why did you never tell me? Because I had no proof. And because telling you would have meant admitting that I cared enough for Pemberton to use you against me. I was not ready to face that truth. And now? Now I do not care who knows. He gripped her hands, his fingers warm and sure around hers. I love you, Serene. I have loved you for 5 years. And if Pemberton wants to use that against me, let him try. I am done hiding. The clock in the distance began to strike midnight. The ball will be ending soon, Serene said quietly. People will be leaving. Let them leave. We should go back. Face them together. Or we could stay here. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Stay in the moonlight a little longer. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But reality was waiting inside those ballroom doors. Reality with teeth. If we do not return, she said, they will assume the worst. They already assume the worst about you. His voice was gentle. That is what makes you so brave. You walk into their judgment knowing exactly what they think, and you refuse to let it define you. I am not brave. I am terrified. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is action, despite fear. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. And you are the bravest person I know. The last chime of midnight faded into silence. Will you come with me? She asked. Back to the ballroom? Yes. Will you stand beside me when they stare? I will stand beside you forever, if you let me. She looked at him in the moonlight. This man she had hated for 3 years. This man she had loved for longer than she wanted to admit. Then let us go, she said. Let us show them that Serene Holloway is not afraid anymore. They walked back through the garden together, hand in hand. And for the first time in 3 years, Serene felt something like hope blossoming in her chest. They did not make it to the ballroom. Lord Aldrich Pemberton was waiting on the terrace, a glass of champagne in one hand, and a smile on his face that made Serene's blood run cold. He leaned against the stone balustrade with practiced casualness, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, watching them emerge from the darkness of the garden like a predator watching prey walk into a trap. There you are, he said pleasantly, his voice carrying the false warmth of a man who had practiced charm until it became a weapon. I was beginning to think you had disappeared entirely. How romantic. A midnight tryst in the garden. The gossips will be absolutely delighted when they hear about this. Step aside, Pemberton. Caius's voice was flat, stripped of all pretense. His hand tightened around Serene's, protective and possessive. Oh, I don't think so. Pemberton did not move, his smile widening into something that no longer pretended to be friendly. You see, I have been doing some thinking while you were whispering sweet nothings to Miss Holloway, about how this evening has unfolded, about the spectacular scene you have been creating with your dances and your declarations. There has been no scene. Has there not? Pemberton raised an eyebrow. The Duke of Thornmere, publicly courting a ruined woman while his contracted fiancée watches from the sidelines. Lady Honoria is quite distressed. Her family is furious. The gossips are having a feast. That is none of your concern. It becomes my concern when it affects people I care about. You do not care about anyone but yourself, Serene said quietly. Pemberton's eyes shifted to her. Ah, Miss Holloway, still so defiant, still so determined to pretend you belong here. Tell me, has Thornmere explained exactly what will happen when he breaks those contracts? Nothing will happen, Caius said. The contracts were signed under false pretenses. They are legally void. Are they? Pemberton's smile widened. Because I have been speaking with Lord Blackwood this evening, and he seems quite convinced that the contracts are ironclad. He mentioned something about witnesses, documents, proof that you agreed to the match months before your father signed anything. That is a lie. Is it? Pemberton swirled his champagne. Lord Blackwood seemed very certain. He even mentioned a letter, written in your own hand apparently, expressing your enthusiasm for the match. Caius went very still. There is no such letter, he said quietly. Lord Blackwood believes there is, and when he produces it tomorrow, I imagine it will be quite difficult to claim the contracts were signed without your consent. Seren felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. A forged letter, more lies, more manipulation, and Pemberton at the center of all of it. You forged it, she said, just like you helped Lord Vance spread lies about me. You are the one who has been manipulating everything. Careful, Miss Holloway. Pemberton's voice was soft, dangerous. Accusations without proof are a hazardous business. You, of all people, should know that. What do you want? Caius demanded. Want? Pemberton pretended to consider. I want many things, Thornmere. I want my debts forgiven. I want a seat in Parliament. I want the respect that has been denied me by people who think they are better than I am. He stepped closer, and his smile turned vicious. But most of all, I want to watch you suffer the way I have suffered. I want to watch you lose everything, the way you made me lose everything when you turned Lord Huxley against me. I told Lord Huxley the truth. You told him lies. I told him facts. Caius's voice was ice. You are a predator, Pemberton. You destroy anyone who refuses to give you what you want, and I will not let you destroy her. How noble. Pemberton glanced at Serene, but I am afraid it is already too late. The letter will be produced tomorrow. The Blackwoods will demand satisfaction, and you, Thornmere, will have a choice. Marry Lady Honoria as contracted, or face complete social and financial ruin. There is a third option, Caius said quietly. Is there? I could destroy you first. The words hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. Pemberton's smile flickered. You would not dare. You have spent 3 years trying to hurt the people I care about. Caius stepped forward. You helped ruin Serene's reputation. You forged documents to trap me in a marriage I never agreed to. You have lied, manipulated, and schemed your way through society like a disease. Careful, Thornmere. I have been careful. His voice was deadly calm. I have been gathering evidence for months. Witnesses who will testify to your crimes. Documents proving your involvement in Lord Vance's campaign against Seren. Letters you wrote to Lady Catherine's family, threatening them if they did not surrender her to Vance's control. You cannot prove any of that. I can prove all of it. Caius pulled a folded paper from his coat. This is a sworn statement from your former valet, the one you dismissed last year for knowing too much. He has been very cooperative. Pemberton's face went white. You have until dawn to leave London, Caius continued. If you are still here when the sun rises, I will deliver this evidence to the magistrate. Every lie you have ever told will be exposed. Every crime you have ever committed will be documented, and you will spend the rest of your life in a prison cell, wondering how you lost everything. Silence. Serene watched Pemberton's expression cycle through shock, fury, and finally, something that looked almost like fear. This is not over, he said quietly. Yes, Caius said. It is. Pemberton stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the garden. Serene released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Is that true? She asked quietly. The evidence. The valet. Every word. Caius turned to face her. I told you I have been preparing for this. I have been building a case against Pemberton since the moment I realized he was behind your ruin. Why did you not tell me? because I was not certain it would work, because I wanted to protect you from hope that might be false, because he stopped, his expression pained, because I am not very good at trusting people with my plans. She stared at him. You gathered evidence to destroy Pemberton. You built a case to break the contracts with the Blackwoods. You spent months preparing for this moment, and you never said a word. I wanted to tell you when it was finished, when I had won. I did not want to promise you a future I could not deliver. And now. He looked at her, and his eyes were fierce. Now I have won. The contracts are void. Pemberton is finished, and I am standing here, free for the first time in my life, asking you if you will have me. Tears burned in her eyes. You are asking me to marry you? I am asking you to let me court you properly, to let me prove that I am worthy of you, to let me spend the rest of my life making up for the 3 years I wasted being afraid. And what if I say no? Then I will wait. He stepped closer. I will wait until you are ready. I will wait until you trust me. I will wait forever, if that is what it takes. The tears spilled over, hot and silent on her cheeks. You are impossible, she whispered. I am yours. His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. If you will have me. The ballroom doors burst open with a force that seemed to shake the very walls. Light spilled onto the terrace like a flood, harsh and unforgiving after the gentle darkness of the garden. Voices rose in shock and scandal, a chorus of gasps and exclamations that rippled through the crowd like stones dropped into still water. A crowd of faces appeared in the doorway, some curious, some horrified, some gleaming with the predatory excitement of people who sensed a scandal unfolding. Lady Honoria was among them, her expression twisted with fury, and something that might have been triumph, as if she had been waiting for exactly this moment. And in the center of it all, Lord Blackwood's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Thornmere. What is the meaning of this? Seren's heart stopped. For one terrible moment, she felt everything she had fought for slipping away. The whispers would start again. The judgment, the exile, 3 years of suffering about to repeat itself in an endless cycle of shame. But Caius did not release her. Instead, he turned to face the crowd, one arm sliding around her waist, holding her close, holding her steady. His touch was a declaration in itself, a message to every watching eye. She is with me. She is mine. And I am not ashamed. Lord Blackwood, he said clearly, his voice carrying across the terrace and into the ballroom beyond. I believe we need to have a conversation about your forged contracts. The words fell like stones into still water, and everything changed. The next hour was chaos. Lord Blackwood's face went purple with rage as Caius produced document after document, each one more damning than the last. The forged letter Pemberton had mentioned was indeed produced, and Caius's solicitor, who had been waiting in the wings for exactly this moment, demonstrated conclusively that the handwriting did not match Caius's own. Lady Honoria wept beautifully in the corner, her mother patting her hand while shooting daggers at Seren. And through it all, Seren stood beside Caius, her hand in his, watching 3 years of pain unravel in a single evening. This is outrageous, Lord Blackwood sputtered. Absolutely outrageous. What is outrageous, Caius replied calmly, is that you attempted to trap me in a marriage using forged documents. I have statements from 3 witnesses who will testify that my father wasn't in sound mind when he signed those contracts. I have proof that the letters of consent were fabricated. And I have evidence that Lord Aldrich Pemberton was behind the entire scheme. Pemberton. Lord Blackwood's face went pale. What does Pemberton have to do with this? He has been manipulating both our families for months. Caius's voice was ice. He wanted revenge against me for interfering in his pursuit of Lady Catherine Huxley. This was his way of getting it. The room fell silent. Matthias stepped forward, his expression grim. I can confirm what Thornmere says. Pemberton approached me 6 months ago, attempting to broker a business arrangement that would have given him access to my shipping routes. When I refused, he threatened to destroy my family's reputation. I believe his involvement with the Blackwood contracts was part of the same scheme. This is preposterous, Lord Blackwood said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You cannot expect anyone to believe that Pemberton orchestrated all of this. I expect them to examine the evidence, Caius replied, which I will present to the magistrate tomorrow morning, unless you would prefer to withdraw your claims now and avoid the scandal. A heavy silence fell over the ballroom. Lady Honoria had stopped crying. Her mother had gone very still. Lord Blackwood's face was a mask of calculation, weighing his options, measuring the damage. Finally, slowly, he spoke. Perhaps we were too hasty in our assumptions, he said stiffly. Perhaps the contracts require further examination before any claims are made. I think that would be wise. Caius's voice was pleasant. Very wise indeed. Lord Blackwood turned to his daughter. Come, Honoria, we are leaving. Lady Honoria rose, her face blotchy with tears. She paused beside Seren, her eyes burning with hatred. You think you have won, she said quietly. But this is not over. I think, Seren replied steadily, and that you should be more careful about who you align yourself with in the future. Pemberton's schemes have destroyed more than one reputation tonight. Lady Honoria stiffened, her lips pressing into a thin line. Then she swept past, following her parents toward the doors. The moment they were gone, the ballroom erupted. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became exclamations. 100 people tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed, and in the center of it all, Seren stood with Caius's arm around her waist, feeling the weight of every gaze. But this time, the gazes were different. This time, they held something other than judgment. Curiosity, respect, even admiration. She had faced them all, and she had not broken. You are trembling, Caius said quietly. I think I am in shock. That is understandable. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You were magnificent. I did not do anything. You stood beside me. That was everything. Lady Hartwell appeared before them, her face wreathed in the most satisfied smile Serene had ever seen. The older woman's eyes sparkled with delight, and she clasped her hands together like a child who had just witnessed something wonderful. Well, she said brightly, her voice carrying just far enough for the nearest guests to hear. That was the most entertaining ball I have hosted in 20 years, possibly 30. Miss Holloway, you must promise to attend every event I hold from now on. I cannot possibly manage another season without your particular talent for creating excitement. I am not certain I can survive another evening like this one, Seren admitted, still trembling from the aftermath of everything that had happened. Nonsense. Lady Hartwell patted her cheek with genuine affection. You are stronger than you know, my dear. You walked into this ballroom knowing exactly what they thought of you, knowing every cruel word that would be whispered behind your back, and you did not falter. You did not hide. You stood in the center of the storm and refused to break. That takes a kind of courage most of these people will never understand. And you have excellent taste in allies, she added with a pointed glance at Caius. She swept away to manage her other guests, leaving Seren and Caius alone in a bubble of stunned, exhausted silence. What happens now? Seren asked. Now, Caius said, we face whatever comes next. Together. And if society does not accept us, then society can go hang. He turned her to face him, his eyes fierce. I am done caring what they think. I am done letting their opinions control my life. The only opinion that matters to me is yours. My opinion, she said slowly, is that you are the most infuriating, complicated, impossible man I have ever known. That does not sound like a compliment. It is not. She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "It is the truth. You are infuriating. You are impossible. And I love you anyway." His breath caught audibly. "Say that again." "I love you." Her voice trembled. "I have loved you for years, even when I hated you, even when I thought you had abandoned me, even when I was certain you felt nothing for me at all. I have never felt nothing for you." His forehead pressed against hers. "I have felt too much. That was always the problem. Then stop fighting it." "I have." He pulled back to look at her. "I surrendered the moment you walked down those stairs tonight. I just needed you to know it." The ballroom had grown quiet around them. Serene was dimly aware of eyes watching, of whispers circulating, of the entire weight of London society bearing witness to this moment. But she did not care. Let them watch. "I want to marry you," Caius said quietly. "Not because of contracts or alliances or duty, because you are the only future I want." She should have protested, should have reminded him that they barely knew each other, that everything was moving too fast, that 1,000 complications still waited to be resolved. Instead, she said, "Then ask me properly." His eyes widened, a flash of vulnerability breaking through the composure he had maintained all evening. "Here? Now? In front of all these people? Where better?" She gestured at the watching crowd, at the sea of faces that had judged her and condemned her, and now watched her with something approaching wonder. "You said you wanted to choose me publicly, irrevocably. You said you wanted to prove that you were not the coward who abandoned me 3 years ago." She held his gaze, steady and sure. "Prove it." For a moment, he did not move. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath around them. Every eye was fixed on the Duke of Thornmere and the woman who had been ruined, standing together in the center of the floor where anyone could see them. Then, slowly, deliberately, with a grace that belied the earthquake she knew was happening inside him, Caius lowered himself to one knee. The gasp that rippled through the ballroom was audible. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Lady Whitfield clutched at her companion's arm. Even the musicians stopped playing, their instruments falling silent, as every person in the room turned to witness the impossible. "Serene Holloway," Caius said, his voice carrying through the sudden silence with crystal clarity. "I have loved you for 5 years. I have been a fool and a coward for most of that time. I let fear dictate my choices. I let duty eclipse my heart. I watched you suffer alone when I should have been standing beside you." He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. "I cannot undo the past, but I can choose the future, and I choose you. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" She looked down at him, this man who had broken her heart and put it back together, who had abandoned her and fought for her, who had spent 3 years learning how to be brave enough to deserve her. This man who was kneeling before her with his heart in his eyes and his future in her hands. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times. "Yes." Forever. The ballroom erupted in cheers and applause. 2 years later, Serene stood in the entrance hall of Thornmere Manor, watching snow fall gently outside the windows. The world beyond the glass was white and silver, a landscape transformed by winter into something magical. Fat flakes drifted down from a pearl-gray sky, settling on the gardens and the drive and the ancient oaks that lined the approach to the house. It was beautiful, peaceful, a far cry from the storms she had weathered to arrive at this moment. Christmas garlands hung from every surface, their dark green boughs studded with red berries and golden ribbons. Candles glowed warm and golden in every window, casting pools of light that pushed back the early darkness of the winter afternoon. From the drawing room came the sound of laughter, voices raised in celebration, the bright chaos of family gathered together. Matthias was there, and Lady Hartwell, who had become a dear friend, and a dozen other people who had stood by her when she needed them most. And somewhere in the midst of it all, a small voice was demanding attention with all the authority a 2-year-old could muster. Wool gathering? She turned, smiling, her heart still catching at the sight of him even after 2 years of waking up beside him every morning. Caius stood in the doorway, impossibly handsome, in a deep green waistcoat that matched his eyes. 2 years of marriage had softened him in ways she still marveled at. The tension that had once lived permanently in his shoulders had eased. The walls he had built around himself had crumbled, brick by careful brick, until the man she had always sensed beneath the ice stood revealed. Laughter came easily now. Smiles were no longer rare. And when he looked at her, there was no mask at all, just love and wonder, and a gratitude that echoed her own. "Remembering," she said. "The ball, the terrace, the moment you told me to leave before the guests arrived." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms with the easy familiarity of a man who had held her 1,000 times and intended to hold her 1,000 more. "I was a fool. You were afraid. Same thing when it came to you." His lips brushed her forehead, gentle and warm. "I spent so long running from what I wanted. So many years convincing myself that duty was more important than desire, that obligation outweighed love. I am grateful every day that you did not let me run any further. I am grateful that you were brave enough for both of us." From the drawing room, Matthias's voice rose in mock indignation over something Lady Hartwell had said. Their daughter Catherine, named for Serene's oldest friend, who had written a letter of tearful congratulations from Scotland, squealed with delight at some game her uncle was playing with her. The sound was pure joy, uncomplicated and infectious, and it made Serene's heart swell with a happiness she had once believed she would never feel. 2 years, a lifetime ago, and yesterday, all at once. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" Serene asked, her voice soft with memory. "On the terrace, before everything changed." "I said many things that night, most of them inadequate to express what I was feeling. You said that protecting me by staying away was never protection at all, that it was cowardice, that you had been telling yourself lies for 3 years to avoid facing the truth." I meant every word. His voice was quiet, rough with emotion even now. "I know." She traced the scar along his temple, the familiar beloved geography of his face that she had memorized over 2 years of waking beside him. "But you were wrong about one thing." "What?" "You thought you did not deserve me. You thought you had to earn the right to stand beside me. You thought you needed to prove yourself worthy through grand gestures and dramatic rescues and evidence gathered against villains. Did I not?" "No." She kissed him softly, feeling him melt into her the way he always did, the way that still surprised her with its tenderness. "You just had to choose me. That was all I ever needed. Not perfection, not heroics, just the choice. And when you did, when you knelt in front of that entire ballroom and asked me to marry you with everyone watching, with your reputation on the line, with everything uncertain, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you had been mine all along, even when you were running, even when you were hiding, even when we were both too afraid to admit the truth." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes bright with happy tears. "You were always mine, Caius. It just took us both a while to realize it." He pulled her closer, holding her like she was something precious, like she was everything, like the world outside could crumble to dust, and he would not notice as long as she remained in his arms. From the drawing room, Catherine called for them, her small voice imperious and delighted in the way that only a child secure in her parents' love could be. "Mama, Papa, come see what Uncle Matthias made." "We should go," Serene said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. "We should." But Caius did not move either. "First, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I love you. His voice was quiet, certain, steady as stone and soft as snow. I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. And every day after that, for the rest of our lives, I will choose you. Not because I have to, not because of duty or obligation or expectation, but because you are my heart. You are my home. You are every good thing I never believed I deserved. Tears burned in her eyes, the happy kind, the kind she had learned to welcome rather than fear, the kind that came from being loved so completely that it spilled over into joy. I choose you too, she whispered. Today, tomorrow, always. Mama, Catherine's voice was getting impatient, the way 2-year-olds do when they have been kept waiting for more than 30 seconds. Papa, now, please. They laughed together, the sound echoing through the entrance hall like music. Then they pulled apart, fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing, and walked hand in hand toward the drawing room where their family waited. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, everything was warmth and light and love. And Sareen Holloway, who had once been told to leave before the guests arrived, who had stayed and faced down her demons and watched an entire ballroom rise for her, knew at last what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a house, not even a title or a fortune or a name restored. Home was this. Home was him. Home was the sound of her daughter's laughter and her brother's voice and the steady beat of her husband's heart against her own. Home was choosing each other every day, forever. And she would never stop choosing him. Thank you for staying with Seren and Caius until the very end. Their story began with a command to leave, a choice to stay, and the discovery that love is not something we earn, but something we choose. It is something we build, day by day, through 1,000 small moments of courage and vulnerability and trust. And if you are not subscribed yet, tap that subscribe button, because there are more stories waiting. More impossible loves, more hard-won choices, more moments that remind us why we believe in happily ever after. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist. And until next time, remember that you deserve a love that chooses you. Always.